My child, there are moments that seem so small you barely notice them. A fleeting glance at my word, a gentle stirring in your heart, a thought that says later, another time, I'm busy right now. Yet it is precisely in those fragile moments that your soul shifts direction without your awareness. You believe you have not rejected me, only delayed, only taken a single step back, only waited so that later you may have more time, more inspiration, more strength to seek me. But while you call it postponement, in the realms seen and unseen, a movement has already begun. A small space opens between you and me. A silence stretches longer than usual. A patch of ground in your mind ceases to be filled by my presence. It is in that very space that the enemy slips in like an invader, walking softly through abandoned land, not loud, not hurried, only patient as it claims each inch of your heart. With every delay in your response, the enemy gains more territory in your mind. While I stand at the threshold of your heart, neither forcing my way nor abandoning you, because I know that with a single moment of your return, everything can be rewritten from the beginning. I do not threaten you, but I do not hide the truth. The just a little longer you think is harmless is often the place where the first cords of bondage are tied to your soul. And as you grow accustomed to letting me wait outside, you also grow accustomed to letting the darkness speak within you without naming it. You cannot see the twisting paths your thoughts travel, but I see every invisible step clearly. When you delay your response, you often reassure yourself that you still believe in me, still belong to me, still love me as before, only now you are not free, not ready, not focused enough, and you assume that such a condition is neutral, harmless. But the soul is never in a neutral zone. It either opens itself to me, or it gradually yields space to another voice. The enemy does not always present itself with crude temptations. Many times it merely places a very reasonable thought in you. You need to rest first. You are too tired to pray. You will take God seriously when life becomes easier. Those whispers do not immediately destroy faith, but they slow your response, stretching the distance between my call and your yes. In those stretched intervals, anxiety starts to root. Comparison begins to take hold. A vague sense of guilt, self-reproach, or self-indulgence starts to germinate, and you think these are only moods, only personality, only a phase. I do not stand afar condemning you. I stand at the door of your heart and knock gently, never breaking in, never forcing my way, waiting to see whether you still recognize that the knock is mine. I wait, not because I am powerless, but because I honor your soul. I do not wish to overpower your will. I desire that my love awaken the longing for freedom within you. When you look back at the days that have passed, you will see there were times when you responded to me almost immediately. A single inner prompting, and you opened the word. A slight stirring, and you whispered a prayer. A burden appeared, and you brought it to me. It was those days that spared you from countless snares you never even perceived. In contrast, seasons of delay often begin so quietly. Today you skim through my word just to finish. Tomorrow, you tell yourself you will pray more diligently in the evening. The day after, you allow yourself to drift through endless screens. And then in the days that follow, you notice your heart becoming heavier without knowing why. I see that heaviness, and I do not despise you. I know you do not intentionally resist me. You simply do not see the weight of the small choices. Each time you say later to me, you are saying now to something else. And that very thing silently rises to claim priority in your heart. I do not record every delayed response in a ledger, but I see the downward curve of your fervor. I hear the confusion in your mind when my voice and all the other voices blend together. And still, I do not flee from that chaos. I step right into it. like gentle light seeping through thick curtains, not blinding, but steadfast. You often think that in order to return to me, you need an intense emotional moment, a long prayer session, a strong resolve, as if only these could compensate for the times you postponed me. But I do not ask you to build a mountain of spirituality in a single day. I only invite you to take one small step right now. A simple whisper. Lord, I know I have kept you waiting, said with sincerity, is more precious than 100 grand promises you cannot keep. One moment when you turn off the noise and sit quietly before me is more powerful than 1,000 hours spent frantically trying to fix yourself. When you return, you will see I am not standing there with a book of judgment, but with open arms, ready to wipe the dust of the road from your soul. What the enemy gains through subtle steps, I can reclaim in a single moment when you open your heart and let me enter. But what I seek from you is not a performance, but honesty, admitting that you have delayed, that you have allowed other things to take my place, that you want to stop that cycle. That is the beginning of freedom, not when you have become perfect, but when you dare to look straight at the structure of postponement operating within your heart. My child, you are not weak simply because you need time to return. You are weak when you no longer desire to return at all. I do not blame you for the times you are tired, confused, or pressed on every side. I only do not want those conditions to become the reason you detach yourself from the source of life. Each time you honestly tell me, I am tired, but I still want to be near you, you break apart a portion of the enemy's strategy in your life. Each time you choose to respond as soon as you hear a gentle prompting, even with a brief prayer, an upward glance, a small act of obedience, you are reclaiming inch by inch of the mental ground the darkness thought it had captured. I am patient with that process, not urging you to instantly become who you once were at the beginning of your faith, yet never ceasing to call you to take one more step, not to prove your strength, but to let you experience again the peace you once knew. What you need is not a better version of yourself, but a renewed relationship with me. From that, every other transformation will flow like flowers that bloom in their season. Therefore, my child, even as you read these words, I am standing at the threshold of your heart, not knocking loudly, not rushing you, but neither turning away. I invite you no longer to call postponement a small thing, but to see it for what it truly is, a space the enemy seeks to turn into its dwelling, and also a space I long to transform again into a place of encounter between you and me. You cannot cultivate the habit of delay and at the same time expect a heart that is sensitive to my voice, just as a room left closed for too long will begin to smell of dampness. So a soul shut against my word will gradually grow heavy in ways you cannot explain. But if you simply crack the door open, light will begin to shift the air inside. I do not ask you why you have made me wait so long. I only ask this today, right now. Will you let me take one more step into your heart if you respond? Even with the simplest words, you will be surprised to realize that I have never left. I am still here, waiting for the answer long delayed but never erased from my remembrance. My child, many times you reassure yourself that you have not rejected me, that you only need more time to think, to arrange things, to prepare your heart before responding. You call it taking things slowly, being cautious, wanting to be more serious with me. But while you are still considering, other voices are already seizing the seat that was meant for me. Delay is not to think things through gradually. It is the act of opening the door for other voices to speak before mine. Because the soul never stands still in a neutral space. When you move my voice down to the place of later, you are pushing another voice up into the place of right now. Even if you do not name it, it may be the voice of fear, demanding that you calculate the future before you trust. It may be the voice of weariness, luring you to escape into quick distractions rather than sit with me in quiet. It may be the voice of the self, whispering that you must protect your own plan first, and only then think of me. None of those voices appear by chance. They grow stronger, little by little, each time you leave, my word waiting outside. Like a guest who arrived first, yet must patiently remain at the doorstep. Look at how you respond to the other invitations in your life, and you will understand which direction your soul is turning. Like someone who does not answer their father's letter, but replies to every message from friends within seconds. You too may unconsciously grant priority to the voices that feed your mind hour after hour. You say you do not mean to ignore me, that you are merely not in the mood, but in truth you are constantly responding. You respond to posts on a screen, to thoughts of comparison, to the call to throw yourself into work without rest, to the voice of external approval. Every time you say yes to those voices before saying yes to me, you are training your heart in a habit to react quickly to the world, and slowly to the spiritual realm. As it is written, there are those who come and listen, whose mouths speak beautiful words, yet their hearts chase after their own desires. And this is not only the story of an ancient people, but a mirror reflecting today's spiritual life. When you are accustomed to spending your best energy on everything else and only try to save a little fragmented time or focus for me at the end, your soul gradually believes that I am an optional addition, not the source of life. From there, my word begins to lose its weight, not because it is weak, but because your heart has been trained to lean toward the louder things. My child, I do not blame you for having many things to worry about, to think through, to handle. I see and understand every context surrounding you. What I want you to realize is not that you must abandon everything in order to hear me, but that you must reorder which voice you respond to first. When you choose to respond to me at the moment you sense even a gentle prompting, you are placing an invisible marker into your day. Here, I am given priority. That marker is small, but it breaks the familiar rhythm of delay, like a crack of light opening in a ceiling, long sealed. When you pause in the middle of the spinning cycle and whisper, Lord, I hear you calling, you reconnect the line between your heart and its source of life, giving the enemy no extra time to fill the silence. Conversely, each time you decide to postpone returning to me, you issue a quiet permission slip for other voices to continue presenting their arguments in your mind. They are not aggressive, they reason with sophistication, insisting that responding to me can wait until things settle, and that what is necessary now is to deal with the pressure in front of you. Gradually, you grow accustomed to that map of reasoning to the point where you no longer realize whose hand drew it. I tell you this reality not to condemn you, but so that you may see clearly the battle line being drawn within your own heart. On the spiritual battlefield, delay is a tactic, not an accident. It is how the enemy stretches the distance between calling and response, so that in that gap it might sow more doubt, more fatigue, more feelings of unworthiness. It will remind you of the times you made promises and failed to keep them, until you feel so ashamed that you no longer dare to return. It will exaggerate the dullness of prayer, making you believe that sitting with me is a waste, while scrolling a little longer on a screen is worthwhile. It will decorate the idea of thinking slowly as wise maturity, when in truth it is simply hesitation, draining the warmth of your heart. I do not tell you to rush in everything, but I invite you to understand that with my voice, right now is a grace, not a burden. Each time you dare to respond even when you do not feel ready, you reclaim a portion of the territory that delay has quietly occupied within your soul. And within those responses that seem so small, you will find my presence becoming clearer, not because I come more, but because you have stopped allowing other voices to wedge themselves between you and me. My child, If today you see yourself in these words, I do not wish you to fall into despair or self-condemnation. I want you to know that I still stand at the threshold of your heart, not closing the book, not turning away, not saying, it is too late. The very fact that you can recognize your delay is evidence that your heart is still soft, that your ears can still hear me. What I invite you to do is not to turn back time, but to change direction from this very moment. Instead of letting tomorrow become the refuge of your promises, you can speak to me right now with a simple but honest prayer. Lord, I do not want to delay anymore, even if I do not know what to do yet. I want to respond to you first. That single sentence, to me, is already a step of return, already a reordering of the inner life. From there, I will teach you how to arrange your time, your priorities, your energy, not by burden or force, but by gentle illumination, so you may see which voices to silence and which to hear. I do not abandon you to fight the battle against delay alone. I walk with you, as long as you are willing to let my voice return to the first place among the voices you answer. My child, the enemy does not come rushing like the fierce storm you imagine. It does not pound on the door or wreak havoc so that you may easily recognize danger. It steps softly, like the wind slipping through a crack in the door, just enough for you not to feel the need to rise and close it. It does not require you to deny me. It only needs you to learn to say, not just yet, to postpone your response once, then once more, until that habit becomes a wall invisible between you and me. At first, your soul is still sensitive. You still feel my gentle reminders while walking, while sitting alone, while opening your eyes at dawn. But because you tell yourself later, that sensitivity begins to fade. The enemy does not conquer by storm. It claims your mind inch by inch through small compromises you assume harmless. And in that place, darkness builds its dwelling within you. It does not ask for permission. It only waits for your silence. Because silence is the sign that you have accepted my waiting a little longer. Look back at every stage in which you drifted away from me, and you will see that no great event tore apart the wall of faith within you. It was not a declaration of rejection, not a deliberate act of rebellion, but simply a succession of times when you ignored the whisper, "Return to me." In each instance, you lost a measure of spiritual sensitivity, like someone who once smelled the freshness of morning air but gradually grows accustomed to the smoke and dust of the city. The enemy rejoices not when you commit a great sin, but when you confidently believe you are still fine, despite no longer responding to me as before. It knows that a soul does not lose its light by a single blade, but by living too long beneath dim lamps, until you no longer remember how radiant true light once was. I see you when you comfort yourself saying, just today, just this one time. And it is precisely those just a little moments that become the key the enemy uses to unlock each room of your mind, not with violence, but with poisonous patience. Like someone who has grown accustomed to living in a damp basement will reject the sunlight when the door is opened. Your soul will tremble before my presence after a long season of delay. This does not happen in a single day. It begins when you believe that a late response has no consequence, that a careless prayer will cause no harm, that a tired morning can be skipped. You think you still stand in my arms, but you have already stepped back, then another step, then another, until you feel that I am far away, even though I have never left. This is the moment the enemy awaits, not when you know you are lost, but when you believe that you are still close. It does not need to strike the soul with force. It only needs to let your mind construct its own excuses for delay. And from there, you will build it a permanent shelter in your heart. I do not condemn you, but I will not let you lull yourself into the illusion. Delay is never an innocent emptiness. It is the path that leads to no longer recognizing my voice. My child, I have once seen your soul tremble under the Spirit when you responded immediately. When a single touch from me was enough to open your heart. I have seen your freshness when you did not wait for feelings, did not wait for convenient timing, did not wait for favorable circumstances. In those days, the enemy had no foothold in you, because it could not force its way between my voice and your response. But when you began to learn how to live with the empty space, it came and anchored itself there, like someone claiming abandoned land, asking permission from no one. I saw the small cracks forming in your soul early on, not to rebuke you, but to heal you. I called them by name not to shame you, but to pull you away from the traps you had not yet seen. Do not wait until collapse to realize you have forsaken my voice. Collapse is only the final result of a process that worked in silence, day after day. I do not wait for you to lose everything to speak to you. I speak from the beginning, when you first begin to drift, because I do not want the enemy to possess even one more inch of your mind. My beloved child, awakening does not come from a violent shove, but from when you open your mouth and say, Lord, I hear you. That very sentence, honest, simple, unstained, will make the enemy tremble, because it breaks the chain of delay it has built over many days. I do not wait for you to be perfected before calling you back. I call you when you are still weak, still confused, still hesitating, because I know that a weak soul that responds is stronger than a determined soul that delays. I stand at the threshold of your heart not because I am powerless, but because I know true power ignites only when you willingly open the door. The enemy cannot break the door when I am there, but it will always seek to persuade you not to open. And each time you agree, it will take one more step forward. I do not force you, for love never forces. I simply stand there, gentle but steadfast, because I know that with one word from you, light will return and darkness will retreat. My child, I do not abandon you because of silence. I do not close my heart because you are slow to respond. I do not withdraw merely because you do not answer me the moment you hear my voice. I remain there, like a watchman who keeps the door open in the rainy night, not because of weakness, but because he knows the one who is lost on the road needs a way home. I do not force you to call my name. I simply make space for you to know that there is always a safe place. Even if you wander far, I do not erase your name from my heart when you turn your back. I keep it as one keeps a seed in winter, knowing that spring will come one day. My love is not a love that demands immediate response. It knows how to wait, how to endure, how to listen even when no words come from you. I do not stand there to judge. I stand there to receive. For if I abandoned you simply because you were silent, then mercy would not be love. It would be a cold transaction. Think of the moment with the father in the story you know so well. The son had left home, lived far away, chasing his own desires, and squandered what he had been given. The father did not chase after him, did not shout, did not send letters of reproach, but he did not close the door either. He stood at the doorway, eyes fixed on the distant road, not to count the days, but to keep a path open, so that when returning footsteps sounded, nothing would block the way. I am the same with you. I do not force you to kneel. I do not lock your life so you must come back. I keep the entrance wide open, even when you have not yet found the courage to turn. I know your heart does not harden in one day, and so I do not use the whip. I use my presence. I do not build fences, I build hope. Like the father in Luke 15 standing on the doorstep. I do not leave when you disappear from sight. I wait, because I know you will find your way back not through fear, but through the memory of arms that once embraced you. I understand your fatigue, I know there are days when you wake up and do not want to pray, not because you hate me, but because you no longer believe you are worthy enough to speak to me. You think I will be angry, that I am tired of your repeated failures, that I only listen to the strong. But my child, a strong soul is not the soul that never falls. It is the soul that knows how to return. I do not look at how many times you stumble. I look at each time you come back. I do not count the silent days to condemn you. I count the tiny steps you take toward me, even if they are only a breath, a glance, a whisper. Please do not leave me. I know the distance in your heart did not begin with rebellion, but with weariness left unhealed. And so I wait, like an oil lamp in the night, not blaming the one who fell asleep, but patiently shining, so they know there is still a place to return. My beloved child, do not mistake waiting for indifference. I do not stand still because I do not care. I stand still because I see the value of the journey you are on. I know that faith does not grow through coercion, but through free choice. I know the soul does not learn to love me by being dragged, but when it realizes it needs me. I do not enter your life with a violent knock, for if I broke the door to enter, your heart would no longer be a dwelling for my presence. It would be a room filled with fear, not a room of love. I am patient not because I am weak, but because I am strong enough not to compete for your attention. I do not command you to respond to me instantly, for love is not a weapon of force. It is an invitation, a gentle breath upon the heart, and a quiet hope that never fades. But, my child, do not mistake that waiting as without consequence. I open the door, but you must step through. I keep the way home, but you must choose to return. I do not abandon you in silence, but long silence will make you unable to hear my voice. Delay does not kill the soul in fire. It suffocates it like a warm blanket placed over each breath. The enemy exploits this, not with violence, but with counterfeit softness. It tells you, leave it for tomorrow. It whispers, there is no hurry. It suggests pray when you feel better. And the more you believe those words, the further you drift from me, not because you betray me, but because you forget that the door is open. I do not close the door before you learn how to come back. I only want you to remember that the door will not remain open forever, not because I leave you, but because your heart will close if you walk too far. My child, I do not force you to open your heart, for force only creates souls that tremble before fear, not hearts that are free to love. I do not seize your wrist to drag you toward the light. I place the light before you so that you may choose to walk toward it. I do not break down the walls to enter your mind. I stand at the threshold, like one who knocks gently, knowing that the answer must come from your own heart. Love does not demand submission. It invites trust. It does not turn you into a servant. It lifts you from the posture of a victim to the dignity of the beloved. If I compelled you to kneel before me, then your yes would only be the echo of fear, not the resonance of faith. If I seized your soul by force, you would be no more than a slave, not the child I created in my image. I desire you to come to me as a person approaches water when thirsty, not as one chained and dragged to a well. Look again at the moments when you came to me in freedom, not when you were pressured, but when your heart acknowledged its own limit. Those tears, no one commanded you to cry them. Those prayers, no one forced you to speak them. They flowed from the deepest part of your soul, from the hollow that the world could not fill. I was not there to command. I was there to receive. Not to demand, but to invite. True love creates room for your heart to pray when it longs, not when it trembles. It allows you to run to me because this is your home, not because I am your jailer. I do not seek souls that obey in trembling. I seek souls that return when they recognize that I am life itself. You may hesitate, lose direction, grow weary. But when you return, I do not ask why you came back so late. I simply open my arms and embrace you. Just like the prodigal son in the story you remember. I did not send escorts to seize him and bring him home. I did not issue decrees, did not send whips, did not plaster posters across every road demanding his return. I allowed him to walk the path of his own choosing, to reach the bottom of the desires he mistook for freedom, to discover that distance does not dissolve love. It only drains vitality. When he turned back, it was not fear of punishment, not coercion, but the memory of the house where he was once known. Then the father ran to him, not waiting for him to kneel, not requiring a polished confession, only seeing a heart that had begun to return. I am the same with you. I do not search for those who know how to bow their heads. I search for those who know how to lift their eyes. My beloved child, love does not grasp your wrist, it holds your heart. Fear subjugates the soul, but love gives the soul wings. I made you to walk beside me, not to be dragged behind me. I give you freedom not because I am powerless, but because I want you to come to me by choice. If I pulled the strings each time you wandered, you would become a puppet, not a being who carries my breath. If I locked your mind and forced you to look only at me, you would be a prisoner, not a child. I invite you with patience, not pressure. I touch you with gentleness, not thunder. Only a response born from love has strength. A response born from fear is merely a shadow without a soul. And, my child, precisely because I love you, I do not tear you away from your choices by force. I throw the lifeline, but you must take hold of it. I open the door, but you must walk through it. I place my voice in your heart like water trickling upon dry soil. But the earth itself must open. The yes I await is not the trembling cry of one coerced, but the whisper of a free soul. I choose you. When those words rise, all of heaven moves, not because you have knelt, but because you have risen in the dignity of a child, no longer ruled by fear but guided by my love. A love that does not demand possession but gives itself to set you free. My child, do not think that my waiting is weakness. I do not stand by the door because I am powerless before your will, but because I honor the gift I placed in your soul freedom. I could shatter the silence with thunder, shake the ground beneath your feet until you cried out for me. But if you kneel from fear and not recognition, your soul still does not belong to me. I do not seek the response of a trembling body. I seek the response of a heart that understands it can only live its true purpose when it freely chooses me. The enemy forces because it does not know how to love. I invite because I know that love can only take root in the soil of willingness. When I wait, it is not for hollow obedience, but for partnership where your will is not broken, but joined with mine. My beloved child, do you see the difference? A slave follows his master because of the whip, but a child walks with me because he knows my hand leads to life. Force produces mechanical actions, but when a heart freely unites with me, it moves like a river, seeking the sun. No one commands it, yet it flows by its own nature. I wait for your heart to recognize the light ahead, not for you to walk in darkness with your neck dragged. So many souls attempt to fix themselves so they can be worthy before returning. But I do not seek souls polished by willpower. I seek souls that open their doors for me to enter. The story of Samuel remains a gentle mirror in history. When I called him in the night, I did not force him awake with thunder. I simply spoke his name, Samuel. He heard, but did not yet understand. And so he ran to Eli. I called again, not louder than thunder, but enough to stir the heart of the young one. It was not that I could not make him tremble and fall before my authority, but that I wanted his heart to learn how to recognize my voice. That is partnership I speak. and you learn to listen. Not coercion, but companionship. When Samuel finally responded, "Speak, for your servant is listening," it was not the statement of someone pressured, but the answer of a soul that opened its door for me to enter. And from that moment, I entrusted him with a mission not because he was strong enough, but because he was open enough. My child, when you delay your response, you are not delaying a command, you are delaying the cooperation I prepared to set your life free. I can accomplish all things without you, but I choose to work with you. I could raise mountains in a single breath, but I desire to plant a small tree in the desert with you. I could defeat the enemy with a word, but I want you to learn how to rise in faith and recognize my power operating through your soul. I do not seek what is already accomplished. I seek hearts willing to walk with me. If you do not step forward, I remain who I am, but if you step forward, you become whole in your purpose. I wait not because I lack strength, but because I want you to grow strong in the freedom you place in my hands. And you know this, the time of my waiting is not an empty silence. It is the space in which your soul softens, where the hardened shells of pride, fear, or self-defense begin to crack. I stand at the door of your heart, not leaving, but not breaking it down. For only when your heart itself turns the handle and opens, do you truly step into the identity of a child. The world is accustomed to the bark of commands, but my kingdom is built upon the whispered yes. The enemy conquers by coercion, but I enter only when invited. My child, let my waiting be your reminder that you are not abandoned, you are honored. My love does not run ahead of your cooperation. It walks beside you when you are ready. When you delay your response, you still believe that your silence is merely letting him wait a little longer. But silence is not a harmless void. It is an acceptance, a permission for every other voice to speak within the soul. I do not restrain your thoughts, nor do I close the door of your freedom. But understand this delay is never neutral. It is a granting of access. When you say later, you are handing a key to the voices waiting outside false comforts, arguments of the flesh, old memories that weaken you, and shapeless fears. I do not come to you with a shout. I come like the first ray of dawn slipping quietly into the room, slow, gentle, and subtle. Darkness does not behave that way. It does not need a storm to conquer. It needs only that you hesitate for one moment when I call, and that moment is enough for it to build a fence in your mind. In the moment you delay, the enemy does not wait for you to commit a sin. It only waits for you not to respond. That silence is like an abandoned field where wild weeds take over long before you even intend to sow. You think you still have the right to choose, but in truth every choice is already in motion. Either you answer me immediately, or you hand the initiative to another voice. There is no invisible fence that blocks their intrusion. The only fence is your response. I do not ask you for perfect prayers. I only ask, do you hear me? The answer does not need to be long, strong, or logical. It only needs to exist. Because delay does not build a house for the soul, it merely leaves the door open. When you delay my voice, your heart does not remain in its previous position. It begins to flow by inertia. One delay leads to the next, like water flowing around stone and never returning to its former direction. You do not notice the drifting because it feels soft and reasonable. You are tired. You are busy. You are not ready. You need more time. But that softness is the cloak of spiritual erosion. I have seen many souls swept away not by rebellion, but by small delays. No one realizes when the light fades. Only when darkness has covered everything do they understand how much they have lost. I do not scold you when you are silent. I do not use fear to push you back to me, but look carefully when you delay me. You are not only pushing me away, you are drawing other voices close. They come in many shapes: the false confidence of ego, the short-lived promises of pleasure, the obsession with outcomes, comparisons, even the comforting definitions you attach to busyness. Every one of them will speak in the same language: not now. And when your heart hears that enough times, it will stop recognizing my voice, even when I stand at the door and call. Delay never stays in thought, it becomes a lifestyle. People do not lose faith in a single day. They simply ignore me for many consecutive days. You do not lose spiritual sensitivity through an impulsive rebellion. You lose it through countless small moments of later. I do not condemn you for weakness. I only warn you that delay creates a gap, and every gap becomes a gateway. Do not treat lightly the moments when I whisper in your mind. They are the fences, the boundaries, the words I lay at your feet so you do not lose your way. Delay does not enter your life as an enemy. It arrives like a gentle suggestion, like someone lightly tapping your shoulder and saying, "There is no rush. Today is not the time." You do not tremble. You do not fear. You do not guard yourself, because the one who weakens you is not conflict but persuasion. I have seen strong souls resist storms, only to fall to the soft whispers of delay. Like night winds slipping through a door frame, they do not hurt at first, but they wear down your spiritual resistance until the day you no longer remember how my voice once sounded. Delay convinces you that you still hold control, that you are only waiting for the right moment. Yet my moment is always now, and the enemy's moment is always later. When you let delay take the throne, your heart is not empty. It becomes a meeting place for many voices competing to speak. These thoughts differ in form, but they share a direction to pull you away from responding to me. One thought tells you that rest is more important than prayer. Another tells you that your tasks must be finished before you can listen to me. Another whispers that you are not ready, not good enough, not calm enough, not peaceful enough to come to me. They do not oppose me, they simply postpone me. And you believe them easily, because they do not bear the mark of rebellion, only the tone of reason. Scripture once said, "They hear your words, but their hearts pursue their own desires." Ezekiel 3:3-3:1. They do not reject the word, they hear it with their ears, while following hearts that no longer belong to me. Delay is the silent division between the ear and the heart. The enemy does not need to make you hate me. It only needs to make you feel no urgency to answer me. It knows very well that I do not force you, and it is precisely in that freedom that it slips in. I stand at the door of your heart and knock. As it has been spoken, that I knock and wait for one to open, the enemy does not knock. It sneaks through the smallest cracks when you stop keeping watch. The moment you say tomorrow, it replies, "I will be here, waiting for you." The moment you think nothing dangerous, it sows seeds of doubt, pride, fear, loneliness, all in low density, like dew settling over a field long before you realize it has turned white. And when you return, you discover that you no longer respond to me, but you react immediately to fear, to emotion, to old memories, to the words of people. That is the sign that delay has turned into dominion. Delay carries another kind of damage. It makes you believe that my voice will change if you do not respond. You think I will speak again, speak differently, speak louder, speak stronger. But you do not understand that my voice does not adapt to the thickness of silence. It is your silence that slowly pulls your soul away from my frequency. I do not shout through fear. I do not scream across desire. I do not tear your heart open to fill it. I speak like a gentle wind trembling the leaves. If you let other voices pour in first, you will no longer hear me, even though I am still speaking. The enemy, however, understands the power of repetition. It does not speak loudly. It speaks constantly. It does not speak truth. It speaks persistently, and you grow accustomed to its rhythm before you realize you have bowed. There is a truth you must face. Delay does not simply slow your response. It redirects your response. The one who does not answer me will answer someone else. The one who does not open the door to me will open the door to another voice. The one who does not rest his heart near me will place it beside something that appears more urgent. There is no neutral soul, only a soul that does not yet realize whom it has already obeyed. That is why I do not teach you, do not fear the darkness, but rather walk in the light. Darkness does not need you to worship it, it only needs you not to seek the light. Delay is the needle pressed beneath the fabric of peace. No blood, no scar, only the illusion of calm until you lose all feeling. There are souls who once heard my voice, once walked beneath my light, once tasted my power, and yet it was postponement itself that opened the door for the enemy to enter. Not because they committed a great sin, but because they allowed a small thought to grow into an abyss. People often believe that downfall begins at the moment of failure, but there is always a thin layer before that. An invisible fold. I will think about it more. Not today. It is not yet time. Scripture has preserved a story like a blade, cutting through generations not to condemn, but to warn. After I sent the prophet Samuel to anoint Saul, I gave him an opportunity to obey me in battle, not to prove strength, but to prove trust. I spoke clearly. Wait. 7 days. Only 7 days. Wait for me to come. Wait for my presence to be established over the people. Then act. For victory does not come from sword or spear, but from a heart aligned in obedience. But Saul looked at the rising pressure. He saw the people scattering. He saw the enemy's spears glimmering. He saw time bending under fear. And he said to himself, I must do something. Just one thought, not rebellion against me. Not abandoning my covenant. Not discarding my word, only an action that responded to pressure rather than to me. He offered the sacrifice before I arrived. 1 Samuel 13. He did not think he was betraying me. He thought he was trying to help me. But obedience was replaced by the initiative of the flesh. And postponement, wait a little longer to see if God will come, became the key handed over to the enemy. When Samuel arrived, the atmosphere had shifted. No longer a meeting between me and my chosen one, but the aftermath of his choice. Samuel did not rebuke him for fear. He spoke a single sentence that sealed destiny. You have acted foolishly. He did not call Saul wicked. He did not call him rebellious. He simply said, foolish, for postponement always hides beneath the name of wisdom. Look at the critical point. Saul did not lose the kingship while committing some ghastly sin. He lost it in the moment of handling it himself. I set the time, he chose another. I taught him to remain beneath my shadow. He chose to stand beneath the eyes of his soldiers. He did not obey the enemy. He simply failed to obey me. And thus, the spiritual gap opened. When a soul no longer places itself under my authority, it immediately places itself under the authority of another voice, not because it desires to, but because the inner space never remains empty. The moment he offered the sacrifice, he declared, I trust my own feeling more than God's word, and everything I had prepared for him began to slip out of reach. A single moment of postponement became a lifetime of regret. Saul's downfall did not come that very day. It unfolded slowly, very slowly, like a forest eaten from the inside by insects. He was still king, still led armies, still won some battles, still wore his royal robe, but I had stepped away from the throne he once believed belonged to him. No one could see that transfer with their eyes. It occurred in the realm only I govern. And this is the very point you often miss. The consequence of postponement is not an immediate outward change, but the shifting of the inner flow of destiny. You still live, still work, still pray, still visit the places of my presence, but the spring inside you has drifted away from me. You cannot feel it clearly because the surface of your life still appears intact, but the soul has been quietly tethered to a different anchor. Do not think that postponement is merely the reflex of a tired mind. It is a path. When Saul first refused to wait for me, he opened the door to a habit. He did not die that day, was not dethroned immediately, did not lose his crown at once. But from that moment, he began listening to his own voice more than mine. The initial postponement was only, I will act first to seize the opportunity. Then it became, I will keep the best instead of destroying everything as the Lord commanded. And finally, I will use his name to cover my disobedience. That was when Samuel spoke the words that shook every generation. To obey is better than sacrifice. 1 Samuel 1:5-2. I do not seek impressive gestures. I seek a heart that responds at the appointed time. Do not look at Saul and think he was unlike you. He feared as you fear. He wanted to keep what he thought was good just as you want to hold on to what you believe has value. He had moments of pressure and loneliness just as you do. But the difference was not strength, it was the moment of response. You may have seen me, heard me, walked with me, but if today you postpone, you are repeating his first step. Not rebellion, not defiance, only handling it yourself. And from that place, every other voice begins to claim ground. There are moments when you think you are merely undecided, that you have not rejected me nor embraced the darkness, that you are simply letting your mind stand in the middle, like a traveler resting on the roadside before continuing the journey. But my child, there is no neutral ground in the spiritual realm. There is no third territory between light and darkness. Ambiguity is not a safe resting place. It is the land where the enemy builds its fortress. It does not need you to declare allegiance to it. It only needs you not to declare allegiance to me. And when a soul stands between currents, it is carried by the weight of the flow, not by intention, but by direction. Paul once warned that we tear down arguments that stand against the knowledge of God, taking every thought captive to obey Christ. 2 Corinthians 1:05. That is not advice for the weak, it is a law for the awake thoughts. Ungoverned will seek refuge in the darkness. In that ambiguous land, the enemy does not roar like a hunting lion, it speaks in whispers. It does not need to strike you with storms. It builds brick by brick doubt as mortar, false comfort as filler, fragments of reasoning stacked in silence. It does not ask, do you want to betray God, but asks, do you really need to respond right now? It does not demand you choose darkness. It only asks that you postpone the light to think more. Wait for a different moment. Seek a calmer time. But peace does not come from delay. Peace comes only from surrender. The peace I give is clarity. Ambiguity is fertile ground where deception takes root. The enemy knows you rarely choose him openly. So he does not attack your decisions, he attacks your postponement. The place where will is loose and faithfulness not yet deep. Look at life simply to understand a symbol. A person stands, watching a house being built, thinking a few bricks in the foundation are inconsequential. Then each day, the walls rise, the roof is set, the rooms begin to take shape. When he notices, the house is finished, not by the owner's hands, but by hidden builders. So it is inside you, thoughts tossed in like harmless bricks. It's nothing, just a few more minutes. He is still there, there's no need to rush. These bricks pile up, and suddenly you find a whole system of thinking has formed a fortress against my voice. That is when you begin to feel resistance whenever I call. Not because you hate me, but because a structure has been built to keep you outside. My child, those strongholds are not built out of obvious sins. They are constructed out of harmless-sounding sentences. A misplaced reassurance, "I'm fine." A subtle evasion, "I'll do it tomorrow." A simple, ordinary self-talk, "I'm tired." Each sentence is a brick laid in exactly the right place. Because the enemy does not build with fire. It builds with small compromises. It knows you will resist temptation if it comes as a sudden blow. So it changes its form, no longer a proud call to rebellion, but a kind suggestion. No longer a blatant seduction, but a gentle invitation, "Think of yourself a little." No longer a push toward losing control, but a tender whisper, "He understands you." Each time you agree, it reinforces another layer of the wall. But my child, strongholds do not collapse under a furious blow. They fall when light is brought in. The strongholds of the mind are built in darkness, so they will begin to shake when you bring each thought into my presence. I do not ask you to smash every brick. I ask you to place a piece of light there. When you look to me and say, "Lead me," you are not only praying, you are removing a brick. When you resist the voice of delay and say, "I will respond now," you are tearing down a section of the wall. When you let your faith speak instead of your confusion, the stronghold begins to tremble. I do not need you to fight like a warrior. I need you to stand in the light as one who is loved. When you think I am demanding too much, you have not yet understood the nature of light. Light never forces, it simply appears and allows what belongs to darkness to reveal itself. The initiative of my spirit is not like the shouting of human power, nor is it like the threats of evil forces. My spirit comes like the breeze that opens the window of a dark room, like the dew that softens dry soil, like a beam of light slipping into a crack in the stone, not to shatter your mind, but to restore it to the original order I set from the beginning. When you are exhausted from trying to chase away the darkness on your own, I do not ask you to run faster. I simply invite you to draw back the curtains and let the light in. For darkness never has the right to negotiate with light. It only exists where light is covered. My spirit does not build through noise. He works in the silence of places you cannot see, in the corners you thought were already dead, in the patterns of thought you have assumed are just the way I am. He does not attack each thought like a soldier. He illuminates each thought like a jeweler, examining a precious stone. He does not shout at your fear, "Go away." He touches it and causes it to dissolve in his presence, as the night dew does not try to persuade the dry ground that it needs water, yet still seeps into every grain of sand until the soil is soft enough to receive the rain. So my spirit does not argue with what you have hidden. He simply keeps touching that place until you are ready to hand it over. You often think your weakness is what disappoints me, but it is precisely that weakness which becomes the doorway for my spirit to work. When you strain to appear flawless before me, you unintentionally close the door to the deepest transformation. My spirit does not require a soul without cracks. He seeks a soul willing to open its cracks so that light may enter. You try to build strongholds with discipline, focus, and self-control. But my spirit does not tear them down through your exhaustion. He dismantles them through surrender. One whisper, "Please dwell in me." One sentence, "Please shine on me." One step, "Please lead me." These small acts are you opening the door. When the door is open just enough, the light will do the rest. My child, I am not the shout in your head. I am the warmth upon your shoulder when you are tired. I do not press you with many words. I lay my hand on your heart so that its rhythm returns to peace. My spirit does not push you, for he knows every kind of pressure makes you defensive. He invites you into truth, because he knows truth only releases its power when you freely reach out to receive it. When you allow your mind to open even a narrow gap to him, He will send light through the entire wall. When you entrust to Him a small corner of your worry, He will open a door for the whole storm inside your heart to have a place to fall. You have believed that transformation must come by relentless effort, but true transformation comes when you let me touch the places you have long kept locked. My Spirit does not come to seize control, but to return the rightful authority to your soul. When He shines into a dark corner, it is not to condemn you, but so you may see a path of escape. When He exposes a twisted thought, it is not to shame you, but so you may discern which voice is true. He does not come so that you bow your head in humiliation, but so that you lift your head in understanding. He does not want you terrified, He wants you awake. And awakening is not tensing every muscle to resist every temptation, but standing in the light until temptation no longer finds soil in which to plant its roots. You once thought spiritual warfare meant tightening every nerve, using all your strength to drive away evil, trying to suppress dark thoughts like a person in a night storm, desperately trying to block every crack in the door with trembling hands. But my child, darkness does not need to be chased out, it only needs light. The strongholds the enemy builds do not fall because you scream at them, they fall because you open the door for me to enter. When you strive to chase away a sinful thought, you unintentionally give it the center of your attention, but when you present your mind to my light, you strip away the space in which it can hide. Surrender is not giving up, it is a repositioning. You stop revolving around the enemy, and you let everything revolve around me. Just as a room does not need to fight its own darkness, it only needs to pull back the curtains so the sun may enter. There are strongholds in your soul that were not built by the devil in some blatant way, but by years in which you kept excusing your own delay. Every time you said, "It's not the right time yet," a brick was laid. Every time you thought, "I will change later," a new layer of mortar was spread. Every time you treated my voice lightly, another story was added. You did not build with malice, you built with postponement. You did not build with open rebellion, you built with compromise. My Spirit does not ask you to dismantle each brick with your bare hands, for that kind of demolition would leave you drained. He asks you for only one thing: open the door and let my light sweep through. Light does not remove bricks one by one. Light renders the entire foundation meaningless. My child, listen closely to this. I do not demand that you become a warrior. I invite you to return to the place of one who lives in the light. The response of the soul is not, "I will try harder," but "Please live in me." When the soul says this, every whisper of the enemy loses its claim in your mind, not because you resist better, but because it has nothing left to cling to. As dew over a field does not need to chase away dust, but dust falls away when the moisture covers every fiber of the soil. So your surrender becomes the atmosphere in which my grace moves, not noisy, not rushed, but irresistible. Remember that the enemy survives on the generosity of the space you give it, while the light lives on the openness of the space you give to me. Many souls believe that holiness is the result of avoiding evil, but true holiness is the result of drawing near to me. The one who tries to fight darkness without stepping into the light will always battle an unseen enemy, while the one who yields to the light will watch darkness vanish before their eyes without a single confrontation. When I call you, it is not to test your strength, but to invite you to lay your strength down. When you release your self-made weapons control, self-justification, perfection, you do not become weak. You simply no longer keep your hands occupied holding me outside. For light does not require you to fight. Light only asks you to open the door. A person sitting in a sealed room may shout at the darkness for an entire lifetime, and nothing will change. Yet one pull of the curtain can bring transformation without another ounce of effort. I invite you into that simplicity, not the simplicity of thoughtlessness, but the simplicity whose burden I carry in the places your soul cannot bear. When you surrender, You are not giving me your defeat. You are giving me the right to operate in the places you cannot reach. And it is there that strongholds tremble, not because you strike, but because I am present. You often imagine that I look at your achievements to decide whether you are worthy of love, that I wait for you to reach a goal, overcome a challenge, conquer a mountain before I smile and accept you. But my child, those measures belong to the world, not to me. I have never loved you because of how much you accomplish. I love you according to how close you draw to me. The first rain of the season does not need to reach a quota to soften the earth. It only needs to touch the soil at the right time, and life springs forth from it. Willingness is the same, not loud, not flamboyant, but strong enough to dissolve the deep dryness within your soul. You imagine that I want results, while what I desire is for you to come. You think I demand achievement, but all I ask is one step toward me. There are souls who try to accumulate enough proof of their goodness before daring to come close to me. They collect days without errors, gather small successes, count long hours of prayer to reassure themselves. Now I am worthy, but they do not know that every minute of delay is a minute spent outside my embrace. I do not need a flawless report from you. I need your heart to tremble at my voice. I do not need you to prove your worth. I need you to believe that your worth has been sealed by me from the beginning. My kingdom is not an arena in which you must run to be accepted, but a home you return to even before you learn how to walk properly. The souls who seem weakest in the eyes of the world are often the ones I lift most quickly, not because they are capable, but because they are willing. Willingness is lifting your hand even when you see no shore, whispering, "Help me," even without a plan. Willingness is allowing me to intervene as soon as you fail, opening your heart even when you have nothing to offer in return. There is no complicated formula in willingness. It is simply a very small movement of the soul, a gentle lean toward the light, and that movement changes everything. The first leaf does not fall to convince autumn to arrive. It falls only to show that the season has come. Your willingness does not persuade me to open the door. It simply proves you have heard my voice and are ready to step in. When you look only at results, you replace me as judge over your own soul. You will condemn yourself when you stumble, diminish yourself when delayed, close your heart when you do not meet expectations. But I do not see you from the bottom of failure or the summit of success. I see you from the meeting place of your heart and my light. I do not ask how many battles you have won. I ask whether you rise when you hear me. I do not ask why it took so long. I ask whether you turn back when you understand. Willingness softens the soil, allowing my blessing to find its pathway. Willingness opens the door, allowing my spirit to enter. Willingness is not proof of your strength. It is proof that you no longer rely on yourself. Therefore, do not grieve over what you have not yet attained. I do not come to recruit perfected souls. I come to call souls who respond. I do not measure a soul by the distance it has traveled. I measure it by the direction it is turning. Every season you pass through has value. Even the season of weakness is where I deepen the roots of faith. You will never reach a level at which I love you more. You only need to be soft enough to let me shape you. When you stop chasing results to earn my approval, you will find peace in knowing that I am the one who accepted you long before you knew what any result would be. There are moments when you mistake obedience as something built on a position of confident strength, on the certainty that I have done enough or I am good enough. But my child, true obedience does not come from feeling deserving. It comes from recognizing the origin of my word, like a violin player placing their finger on the correct string. The sound does not emerge because of great talent. It emerges because they align themselves with the laws of resonance already established. You do not create my will. You simply stand in the place where my will can resound through your life. When you follow me, it is not a victor receiving their reward. It is a soul joining the rhythm of the life I designed from the beginning. When the self no longer seeks a spotlight. Obedience becomes the natural cadence of the soul. My child, you once misunderstood obedience as a testimony of capability, but I do not look for souls who prove they are strong. I look for souls who recognize my voice and do not resist it. When a person believes they are worthy, they unconsciously place themselves in the position of the source. They believe their merit has opened the way, and when that way closes, they begin to question their own value. But when the soul walks in recognition, you will see that every door opens only at my appointed hour, that every step you take is not a declaration of ability, but a response to my word. As on that night in Bethlehem, when Mary did not say, I am good enough to bear the Savior, but said, let it be to me according to your word, Luke 1:3-8. That was not weak humility, it was the steadfastness of a soul who understood that my will is the only foundation. Right-timed obedience is not an emotional reaction when your heart is aflame. The souls who obey only when moved by emotion will stop when the emotion fades. Emotion is a spark for a moment. Recognition is the ember that keeps warmth through the long night. A person who obeys because of emotion will walk a short distance and then wonder why the path is dark, why their feet are tired, why there is no applause. But the one who obeys because of recognition needs no praise. They do not look to the noise of the world to validate their steps. They look only to the light sufficient for one step and trust that the next measure of light will arrive when they set their foot down. Right-timed obedience is like the small movement of a sprout breaking through the spring soil, not because the sprout believes itself great, but because it recognizes the season has come. My child, the humility found in obedience does not make you small. It frees you from the burden of having to prove yourself. When you follow me with the spirit of lead me, your soul is no longer governed by comparison, envy, or fear of failure. You no longer face decisions in a posture of defense, but in a posture of trust. Recognition simplifies the path. You do not need to stir up courage before every choice. You only need to ask where I am leading you. When obedience becomes rhythm rather than duty, you will see doors open not because you knocked harder, but because you knocked at the right moment. And in that very timeliness, my peace covers you. For you are no longer running ahead to prove something. You are walking with me to live what I prepared for you since the moment of creation. Just as the first leaf does not fall to persuade autumn that its time has come, but only to respond to the silent call of the season. The obedient soul comes at the appointed time without noise. It does not require others to know. It does not require you to explain. It does not require you to argue with yourself. It needs only one thing to know that I am the source. And when the soul answers me through recognition rather than performance, you will enter the place where my grace flows gently like water seeking the lowest valley. Not because the water is weak, but because it chooses the right path. You often tremble at the thought that I might turn my back on you, as if one day I would grow weary, disappointed, or exhausted and abandon you in the wounds you inflicted upon yourself. But my child, I am not like the relationships of this world. I do not love you as people love one another, a love that thins when tested, changes when unreturned, and fades when disappointment persists. I love you with the steadfastness of the one who formed your soul from the dust and my own breath. Water does not abandon the stone by its own will. Only when the stone resists and forces itself out of the flow does it lose contact with the cool current. The more you try to stand in the dryness of your own strength, the farther I seem, not because I ever stepped away, but because you distanced yourself from me. The abandonment you fear is not what I do. It is what you create when you close the door. When the soul says, I can manage on my own, that is when you push me out of your thoughts. When you prioritize the noise of the world and disregard my voice, that is when you close your ears to my guidance. When you treat fatigue, indifference, or wounded pride as justified reasons to step away from me, you unknowingly walk into the fields where the enemy has always been waiting. I do not abandon you, but I do not cross the doors you have locked from within. I do not break the lock to enter. I wait until your trembling hand opens it, even if only a sliver, for my light needs only a crack to break through, while darkness requires the whole room to exist. My child, do not mistake my silence for absence. There are moments when I am silent not because I am far from you, but because I am standing behind you, holding back the storm your eyes cannot see. A child in the night will cry, believing it has been left alone, yet it does not know that a hand is resting on its shoulder, adjusting each step so it will not slip. You do not see me intervening in every battle, because if you did, you would no longer understand what faith is. There are times I hide not to test you, but to teach you to look toward my light instead of your own shadows. I do not withdraw from you, even when you say, I am not worthy. In that very moment I am closest, because you have come near to the truth that your strength was never the foundation. Souls that have known disaster, that have fallen hard, that have lost themselves in sin, are often the ones who tremble and ask me, do you still accept me? And I answer in peace, I have never stopped accepting you. You simply forgot the way back. The abandonment you feel comes from you turning away, not from me turning away. When you wander in old wounds, rehearse failures, and drown in feelings of unworthiness, you build an invisible cage and conclude that I am no longer there. But a surrendered soul understands that I do not need you to do anything before returning. Your turning back is already the deepest form of prayer. Water does not ask the stone whether it is clean before embracing it. It simply flows around it, smoothing, washing, and returning it to its original form. Therefore, my child, understand this: I do not forsake the soul that is struggling. I overlook no one who trembles, searching for me. I forget no one who comes back even in stumbling. I only step back when you lock your heart, not because I desire distance, but because I honor the freedom I gave you. I could shake the mountains, but I choose to knock softly upon the door of your heart. Because I do not seek slaves, I seek children who can say, please come in. And at the very moment those words leave your lips, the stronghold collapses, not because you destroyed it, but because my light has found a place to dwell. There are souls who believe that to return to me they must prepare elaborate explanations, apologies, and reports of their pain and failures. They imagine that I expect a structured speech, a logical presentation, or irrefutable proof of their resolve to change. But my child, the door of the heart is not opened by eloquence. It opens with a simple action, a hand grasping the handle. A ray of light does not wait for the sun to flood the entire room before entering. It only needs a narrow gap between the curtains. So it is with the heart. It needs only the smallest movement toward me, even trembling, even unfinished, even wordless, and I will handle the rest. I do not need a storm in your speech. I need a breath returning home. You once believed that your return had to be grand, a sleepless night of prayer, a powerful vow to change everything, an introduction filled with resolve that would astonish its hearers. But my child, I have seen countless souls collapse beneath the weight of such expectations. They do not dare return because they think they are not ready, not worthy, not prepared to deliver the perfect apology. They wait until they feel stable, until every wound has healed, until every weakness disappears, and only then do they consider touching the handle. But the spiritual path does not wait for the heart to be perfect. It begins with a small step while the heart is still trembling. Your hand may shake, but the handle does not. The door does not ask you why. It simply responds to your movement. My child, The act of grasping the handle is not strength, it is surrender. Surrender is not defeat. It is recognition that you have walked in darkness long enough. Just as a ray of light does not argue with the curtain, it does not scold. It does not demand reasons. It simply waits for a small gap. I wait for you in the same way. I do not pound the door to break it. I do not shout to make you afraid. I simply stand before it and wait. I rest my hand upon your heart, not to push, but to remind you that life remains outside the walls you have curled yourself into. Whenever you turn even slightly, I will widen the opening. Whenever you whisper, "Help me," I will act like the gentle wind lifting the sail, never demanding you fight the waves on your own. There are souls who ask me, "If you love us, why do you not open the door for us?" I answer, "Because that door belongs to you. I created the handle so that your freedom would be respected. I can shake the whole world, yet I will not seize the consent of the heart. I could pour forth radiant light, yet I choose to let it slip in through the very opening you permit. In grace, I have the right to enter, but in love, I choose to wait for you. Love does not impose transformation, it lifts you when you desire to live. Spiritual maturity is not formed by me walking in your place, but by you walking with me, even if that step is so small that it is merely the act of reaching out to grasp my hand. So, my child, do not wait for grand emotions. Do not wait for blazing visions. Do not wait for perfection before beginning. Much life has been lost simply because they believed their return must be spectacular. Many doors have remained shut because their owners thought they had to step into the sacred moment before turning the key. But the sacredness lies in the simple act you dare to take the handle instead of drowning in thought. The door opens for souls that know how to move gently, that know how to say, "I am not safe outside," that accept I am not waiting for a speech, but for you. And when you touch the handle, it is not that I arrive, it is you returning to the place where I have stood from the beginning. There are souls who believe that the first yes must change everything at once. Fear must vanish. Wounds must close. Old habits must end overnight. The road ahead must flatten as though miracles are instant repairs. But my child, the first yes is not fireworks. It is the small click of a switch in the darkness. Darkness does not disappear in a single breath, but it loses the right to own the room. Because light has begun to enter. You do not need to see the entire road before stepping forward. You only need to see enough to know that ahead of you is no longer an abyss. The first yes does not do everything for you, but it breaks the chain of delay that has held you immobile for far too long. It is like the first awkward gasp of breath when the soul starts inhaling again, not deep enough, not steady enough, yet enough to prove that life still exists. You once believed that the first response had to be perfect, that if you were not strong enough, or faithful enough, or serious enough, then silence would be better while you prepared more. But my child, that silence is precisely where the enemy cultivates its power. It does not need your full agreement, it only needs your hesitation. It does not oppress you through attack, but through delay, like a vine that does not need deep roots to choke a chair. It only needs to wrap around each corner, each leg, each armrest, until you can no longer sit on it. The first yes is like a blade that cuts through that vine, even if it severs only one strand. When the first strand is cut, the entire structure is no longer seamless. It must begin rebuilding from the root. And in that very moment, its authority is already weakened. My child, the enemy does not fear your grand declarations. It fears the first small action. It does not fear sermons about faith. It fears the first step away from stagnation. The souls it grips are those who believe that a perfect moment must arrive before they begin, that the time is not yet right, that they must be more stable before moving. But that perfect moment will never come. The enemy constructs it as a mirage to trap you in a waiting state, and waiting is its sharpest chain. The first yes is a blade that does not need to be sharp, only deep enough to tear the binding. Once the rope is torn, dependence is broken. It is not a complete victory, but the beginning of freedom. Some ask me, why is the first yes not strong enough to solve every problem? I tell you this because I do not build a soul with a single miracle. I build through continual movement, just as a sprout does not become a great tree in one night. The first yes is the seed that germinates. I nourish it with light. I water it with my presence. I shield it from frost. But it is your soul that must let its roots go downward. Growth is not fireworks, it is warmth in the soil. And that warmth begins when the shell of silence is broken. The first yes does not bear fruit instantly. It clears the way for the roots to find life. My child, I have seen many souls flee from the first answer because they fear failure. They say, if I begin and fall, I will be ashamed. But I do not look at the fall. I look at where your soul places its weight. The enemy exploits the fear of failure so that you never taste victory. It does not need to defeat you outright. It only needs to delay you long enough for you to bind yourself to the chair. I do not require perfection in your yes. I only require sincerity. When you say yes while your heart still trembles, while your faith is still incomplete, while you do not understand everything, you have already denied the kingdom of delay and extinguished the enemy's fire within your own mind. The first response is like a faint breath in a room long closed, and that breath itself declares that life has not left the soul. But as you continue to respond, each time you place your heart under my light, you speak to the darkness that you no longer belong to it. You do not need to shout, nor prove yourself, nor adorn your prayers to clothe yourself in spiritual cosmetics. Simple response is the strongest rejection of silence, because silence is the enemy's territory. When you choose to speak, to open your heart, to take a step, you are dismantling the space where darkness has been comfortable. It finds no place to cling, not even a small hook, because response erases every assumption it had about you, that you would keep delaying, that you would keep waiting, that you would keep fooling yourself with tomorrow. My child, some believe that spiritual response must be grand, radiant, impressive. But I tell you, spiritual response is not thunder. It is the small and steadfast choice. When you decide to turn your face toward me, even while your heart trembles. When you choose to pray, even though your feelings are dry. When you kneel, even though your mind is still tangled. These very choices are the clearest spiritual proclamation. I do not belong to silence. Silence is the neutral ground. You think harmless. But in the spiritual realm there is no neutrality. Silence is where the enemy builds its fortress. Response is the beginning of victory. A single whisper of, "Lead me." A single word of, "I return." A single step of, "I will obey." Every response is a brick pulling the soul out of an invisible prison. There is a story you once read. David stood before Goliath, not with battle experience, not with armor, not with a shining sword. He carried only a sling and a few stones. But what made Goliath tremble was not the stones, it was David's response to my call. The entire army of Israel had been silent, watching, trembling under the weight of the words, "Not enough." Their silence made the enemy greater, made its shadow stretch across the people. But when David stepped into the valley, it was not an act of recklessness, but a declaration, "I do not belong to silence." He did not fight Goliath with human strength. He responded to me with faith. And what I did afterward silenced the nation before my power. My child, David did not prevail because he was stronger than the giant, but because he refused the space of silence. Silence says, "You are weak." Response says, I am with you. Silence says, wait a little longer. Response says, now. Silence says, you must understand everything first. Response says, I will step forward and understand afterward. I do not require you to hold 5 stones in your hand. I only need you to put your hand into the pouch. I do not demand that you slay demons with long prayers. I only need you to say, I am here. Response is a declaration of where the soul stands. To give no response is to surrender space to the enemy, while to respond is to open the door for me to enter the territory that belonged to me from the beginning. When you respond, you are not merely speaking to me, you are re-establishing the identity of your soul. Identity is not shaped by memories, by wounds, or by years of failure. Identity is shaped by the voice you choose to answer. Many souls collapse not because they are weak, but because they stay silent for too long, allowing the enemy to define them by shame, by fear, by delay. Yet one single response, one moment where you open your mouth to speak to me, is enough to shatter the invitation of the abyss. I have seen people who believed it was too late, too heavy, too defiled to return, and yet they needed only to whisper a word, only to look in my direction once, and the whole of heaven moved to pull them back from the depths. The smallest of your responses is stronger than the longest silence. When you call on me, do not think you are performing a ritual, a duty, or an act that must be perfect before I will listen. I do not stand at a distance waiting for you to complete a flawless ceremony, nor do I record every syllable to grade your performance. I listen as the source receives water returning to it, as air wraps around your lungs when you take your first breath after holding it for too long. Communion with me is not a presentation according to religious standards. It is a return to what you were created to be, a soul that knows how to turn to its source. When your heart cries out, even slowly, awkwardly, full of doubt, I recognize that movement as one sees dawn appear after a long night, not requiring brilliance, only existence. It is the ordinary, unadorned, unstructured turning that matures the soul, because it proves that you have learned to see me as air, not as a ritual on a schedule. The breathing of the soul does not wait for crisis, nor does it appear only in prayer, hours carefully prepared. It comes in moments when you sit on a stone bench and do not try to find the right words, yet still turn your heart toward me. It comes when you walk through the hallway at work and whisper, keep me in peace. It comes when your heart feels heavy and you do not know what to say, yet you still breathe out, be here. Those words do not make you holy. It is the turning that is holy. I see souls that seek me only when they desire a miracle, and I also see souls that seek me like a breath, steady, quiet, making no promises except to place their hearts in my hands. The first seeks results, the second seeks presence, and it is those who seek presence who become vessels that do not crack when the trial descends. You once believed communion with me must begin in absolute readiness, a quiet mind, an arranged heart, a life put in order. But my child, breathing does not wait for the body to be healthy before it begins. Rather, breathing is what keeps the body alive. When you feel weak, speak to me. When you are unsure, speak to me. When your heart feels tangled, speak to me. You do not gather strength before you breathe. You simply inhale. I do not require perfection in prayer. I only ask, do you still return? Or have you allowed silence to speak for you? Communion with me does not begin with organization. It begins with turning toward me. Every step you take toward me is prayer, not because you speak, but because you choose me over noise, me over your own thoughts, me over postponement. My child, a mature soul is not the one that speaks many spiritual words. but the one that keeps the rhythm of communion even when emotion no longer carries it. You will eventually enter the wilderness, a place of dryness, where promises seem to have faded, where every prayer feels empty. There you will learn a truth: communion with me does not rest on emotion, but on relationship. You do not sustain relationship by excitement, you sustain it by faithfulness. And every time you choose to speak to me in the dark, you ignite a flame the enemy cannot extinguish. For the growth of the soul does not come from grand prayers, but from steadfast ones, like a heartbeat that needs no audience, like the sun that rises without needing anyone to name it. Do not mistake the absence of my voice for the absence of my presence. I am not a flickering lamp that dims according to your emotions. Even when you are silent, I am speaking. When you stop speaking, I remain. But when you commune with me, when you perform that simple act steadily, you open a path for my presence to sink deeper into your life. I do not arrive through sudden storms of spirituality. I arrive through the steady breathing of a soul that knows how to look in the right direction. And when communion becomes breath, you will no longer speak to me just to obtain answers. You will speak because you have learned that being in me is life. There are souls who believe that relationship with me requires enduring hours of prayer, dramatic breaking, holy moments worthy of attention. But my child, what I seek is not strained effort, but a heart that knows how to return in the small, ordinary moments of the day, like light slipping through a crack without tearing down a wall. My presence does not come through forceful intensity, but through the continual acceptance of a soul that knows how to open. When you pause in a crowded corridor simply to inhale and whisper, "Stay with me. I am there." When you sit before a cold cup of tea and remember me, I am there. When you do not know what to say but quietly murmur, you know my heart. I am there. Relationship does not grow by leaps. It grows by quiet dots connected one after another, forming a spiritual path unbroken, though never noisy. You think strong communion is when you feel something extraordinary from me, yet like a young plant drinking dew every dawn. You do not realize that the small things I sow into your mind each day are the nourishment of the soul. I speak to you through thoughts as gentle as breath, through the urging to pause 1 second before speaking something that may harm another, through a sudden calm in the middle of your rush, through a line of scripture that flickers alive among 1,000 sounds. My voice is not always thunder shaking the heavens. Often it is like leaves touching one another in the wind. I know your heart has become accustomed to seeking obvious signs, declarations of right, wrong, gain, loss. But a mature soul recognizes me in subtleties, because it has learned to live in my rhythm and does not demand that I create a climax before it listens. When you maintain your awareness of me, you are making a spiritual decision. The enemy cannot break you. Choose to place your mind where the light is constant. Relationship is not formed by mental endurance or harsh discipline, but by allowing me to be present in the small spaces the world ignores. I know you are busy. I know you are tired. I know you cannot always pray in long sentences, but you can place me in your gaze, in your breath, in the quiet moment as you open your door, in the second before you react in anger. Each time you do so, you are telling me, I am still here, and I answer, I am still here. No grand ceremony is needed to ignite the bond between us. You need only refrain from severing its rhythm by deliberate indifference, gently echoing the words I have already spoken in Scripture. I am with you always, even to the end of the age. Matthew 28:20. Not I am with you during prayer. Not I am with you when you are worthy, but always on the days you listen, on the days you are silent, on the days you stumble, on the days you walk strong. My presence does not depend on your perfection, but your communion with me depends on your willingness to recognize me in the small spaces of everyday life. When you walk through the familiar doorway, I am there when you fold your clothes. I am there when you take the first sip of water in the morning. I am there. A mature soul is a soul that understands I do not only appear in what is grand, but I slip into every crack of lived moments. My child, if you seek me only in events, you will live a life waiting for events. If you only hear me in storms, you will grow accustomed to living in storms just to find me. But when you learn to receive me in small things, you no longer need tempests to feel protected, because protection has become the atmosphere around you. When you can hear me in peace, you will not panic when trials arrive, because your soul has been trained to hear my voice in stillness. Communion is not something you switch on in a crisis. It is the continuous breath that keeps you from ever falling into spiritual collapse. You do not need force to sustain it. You only need to keep returning. Like a heartbeat that never asks, "Do I still need to beat?" It simply beats because it knows that life rests in that movement. When you respond to me consistently, no grand words, no ritual, only a small but genuine inner movement, the enemy begins to lose footing in your mind. It needs your delay to lay its foundation. It needs your silence to erect its first wall. It needs your later to pitch its tent in your thoughts. But every time you answer me, even with a whisper, a breath, a simple, "I am here," you suffocate the air it depends on, not because your voice is louder, but because your voice turns toward me, and that very turning shatters the stones it has not yet placed. The enemy does not conquer by storms, it builds in secret through the habit of neglect. But I do not wait for you to forge a wall of fire, I only need you to open the door. For light does not labor to drive away darkness, it simply needs an entry. Do not imagine that responding to me must be exhausting, tense, or a prayer stretched over pages. There are moments when you only lift your eyes from the screen, place your hand on your chest, and say, "Lead me." I consider that a fallen fortress. There are mornings when you have no strength to speak much, yet in your heart you whisper, "I do not want to drift away from you." I consider that a victory. There are nights when you are too weary to pray, but you turn your back on the things that pull you toward darkness and choose silence. In me, the enemy sees that as its defeat, because it knows that your response, even a small one, has affirmed my authority over your soul. The enemy does not tremble at perfection, it trembles at persistence, not because you are stronger than it, but because you do not leave the door unlocked for it to claim. You think that one response changes nothing, but, my child, it is that one time that begins a spiritual rhythm. When you respond to me today, your soul will respond more easily tomorrow. When you refuse the whispers of darkness today, tomorrow it must search for another entry, and each day the search becomes harder. Response is not a blaze, it is a breath, steady, slow, just enough to keep spiritual life uninterrupted. The enemy does not seek noise, it seeks vacancies. It does not build castles on trembling ground, it builds only on land that sleeps. And the soul that responds to me regularly is a soul that never falls asleep in silence. Remember this in practical life when you clean your home. Dust returns every day. But if you sweep regularly, it never becomes a layer. Your mind is the same. Dark thoughts are not frightening when they are simply thoughts. They become frightening when you leave them untouched. There are times when dark words, such as fear, doubt, or self-condemnation surge upon you, and you do not know what to do. Yet you quietly call me, "Be with me." That is the first broom. The next time you pause before reacting and choose stillness instead. That is the second broom. Then one day you look back and see your mind is no longer the wasteland the enemy loved to inhabit, because you have turned it into a place that welcomes me, not by a battle, but by small steps repeated. Responding to me regularly does not make you a fierce warrior, It makes you a place where darkness cannot take root. You do not need to shout at the enemy. You only need to open the door to the light. You do not need to prove your loyalty with loud declarations. You only need to practice returning. When you answer me each day, not as obligation but as rhythm, your mind begins to build its own fence of light. A fortress of darkness requires time, requires the complicity of neglect, requires lack of response, but a single, small response is enough to crack its foundation. What I teach you is not how to fight it, but how to deny it soil to grow. You do not need to spend your days wrestling with darkness. You only need to let me be present, and the rest will resolve itself. There are souls who walk in faith but carry the posture of exiles, constantly guarded, always doubting, living as those who must prove their worth before I receive them. They believe I demand perfection before they return, believe that weakness is evidence of failure, believe that mistakes make them unworthy of my hand. But I did not create you to live like someone who touches me today and hides from me tomorrow. I want you to learn to return as one who knows they belong, not like a guilty runner seeking shelter, but like a soul who recognizes that I am home. Breath, source of life, the place you never have to ask permission to come back to. To live as one who always returns is to understand that closeness is not purchased by achievement, but sustained by sincerity. You do not need to run back to me. You only need to step. My child, the one who runs away spends their energy avoiding the light, creating 100 reasons to delay a simple meeting. That person asks themselves, have I done enough? Am I worthy? Will I be judged? And these very questions become the ropes that bind their soul. But the one who always returns carries the same questions in their heart. With only one difference, they do not let them hinder their steps. They know I see the things they have not dared to speak. No, I understand the fears they have not yet named. And they come not because they are strong, but because they know that weakness beside me is safer than pride away from me. That person does not argue with the light. They simply open the door and let the light find its own way in. Living as one who always returns does not mean you have never done wrong. It means you refuse to let failure define your trajectory. There are days when you feel shattered, yet you still sit and say, have mercy on me. There are nights filled with doubt, yet you still whisper, lead me. There are seasons when you are so barren that you believe you have nothing left to offer, yet you still extend your hand toward me instead of closing the door. When you do this, you do more than break the enemy's sentence of condemnation. You teach your soul a new rhythm, the rhythm of returning, the rhythm of not fleeing. The one who runs believes darkness is safe because it hides the wounds. The one who always returns knows that light is safe because it heals them. There are souls who have walked far from me and then come back, asking, will you accept me once more? I do not answer with arguments. I answer with my heart. I did not form you to count how many times you fall. I formed you to learn how to rise and come closer each time you fall. I do not call you to open a courtroom. I call you to open a door. I do not keep you in severity. I keep you in mercy. You do not live as one who must ask permission to be loved. You live as one who was loved before you could speak my name. When you look at me as a refuge and not a stage for proving yourself, your soul will no longer need to hide it, only needs to return. My child, life is full of moments that make you want to disappear. Disappointment, judgmental eyes, repeated mistakes, the whisper that says, you are not enough. But you do not need to run from me every time you stumble. I do not call you the runaway. I call you the one who returns. I did not design heaven as a fortress for the perfect. I designed it as the home of those who refuse to let fear steal the words, please receive me. Living as one who always returns is living in the softness of trust. You accept that I am the source and you are the stream. I am the sky and you are the bird. I am where you begin and where you come back. When you understand this, every step you take, however fragile, moves toward me, and that is enough for me. My child, you do not return merely to drink in the light and store it in your heart as an ornament of private faith. Light is given to move, to spread, to touch the lives of others the way a stream runs through a dry meadow. The soul that knows how to return is not a soul that hoards light for itself, but a soul that becomes a spring, a place where my presence finds passage through the spiritual veins of humanity. As a stream does not keep water for its own bed, as dawn does not keep light in the clouds, you are called to move beyond passive absorption and become one who carries the light, not because you are great, but because my light never lies dormant in hearts that still beat. Even when you do not fully understand it, that light seeks a path through every breath, every word, every action you take in the world. Many believe that faith is a private affair between me and them, a secret communion locked in a closed room, untouched by anyone else. But you were not created as a sealed well, you were created as a flow. When you return to me and let my light soak into your wounds, you are not only healed, you become a living testimony, even without trying to perform. Others see peace in your eyes when by all expectation you should collapse. They see patience in your tone when you ought to explode. They see steadiness in your steps when you should fall to your knees. You do not need to proclaim that you carry the light. Your very presence, each calm rhythm in your soul, will reveal it. Light does not demand that you become a speaker. Light makes you someone who lives, and life always spreads. When a soul only receives, the light becomes heavy because it must lie still in a cramped place. But when the soul begins to give, the light becomes as natural as breathing. In silent conversations, you do not need to instruct anyone. All that is needed is that you do not hide me in a secret corner of your heart. You enter your workplace not as one who must compete for position, but as one who carries my presence. You return home not as one who comes to judge, but as one who comes to sit and listen. You face difficulties not as one who must prove yourself, but as one who knows that I was there before you. The words you speak will not always bear my name, but they will bear my spirit, patience, gentleness, abundance that does not sweep others away. Just as a stream does not choose where its water will go, your soul does not need to choose where the light will pass. You simply allow the light to pass through you. There are times when you think you are not good enough to be a source of spread, that you must be perfectly pure before you can bring light to others. But my child, I do not choose perfect vessels, I choose cracked ones, because those fractures become windows through which light can escape. The lives I touch seldom flow through those who think themselves flawless. They flow through those who have fallen, who have returned, who have learned to remain in me despite their wounds. The cuts in your soul do not make you unworthy, they make my light visible. A stream is not a stream because it is wide, but because it flows. A soul is not a source because it is flawless, but because it does not hide me. My child, when you begin to live as a source of light, the enemy will seek to drive you back into a state of hiding. It wants you to believe that light is for contemplation, not for pouring out, that blessing is for possession, not for reviving the souls grown dry. But it forgets one truth: the more the stream flows, the deeper its spring, the more the soul gives, the more light it holds. When you stand in me, you lose nothing by giving. You only make more room for me to pour. You are not depleted when you offer encouragement. You only become broader, so that I may continue to fill you. The soul that knows how to return never just returns, it returns, and then steps forth as one who carries light into the dark corners I have chosen. And when you walk, I walk with you, my child. I do not demand great deeds for my light to shine through you. I simply invite you to step into each moment with the posture of one who has returned. You imagine that miracles emerge from grand prayers, fiery sermons, or acts that defy the world. But you have yet to realize that heaven often enters human life through the gentlest movements. Light does not arrive with thunder. It enters through the crack of an open heart. You listen to someone who is discouraged instead of interrupting to win the argument. You remain silent before one who is angry instead of responding with rage. You write a blessing to a friend drowning in chaos instead of saying, "We'll deal with it later." Such things never reach the headlines. They do not earn applause. But I see them and I pass through them. My child, many souls believe they must prepare everything, must reach a lofty spiritual state before they are worthy for me to use. But do you not know that light does not wait for the perfect before it flows? Light only waits for the willing. When you open your heart in the most ordinary moments, my Spirit uses that very ordinariness to touch another soul. It is not because you understand my entire plan, but because you give me a place within each small decision. When you step off the bus to give your seat to an elderly person whose hands are trembling, when you rest your hand on the shoulder of a co-worker who is collapsing, when you slow down to listen to a frightened heart, you are opening pathways through which I may walk. My child, you do not see that behind every small act. A rain of grace is quietly being prepared. In daily life, many pass by one another without ever touching one another. They look, but they do not see. They hear, but they do not receive. They brush against each other, but they do not feel. You are not called into that way of living. My light does not turn you into a distant person. It makes you one who is present. You do not need to lift prayers to the heavens in every circumstance. Sometimes you simply need to be there. Some will remember you not because of the things you teach, but because of how you listened. Some will remember you not because of the great things you accomplished, but because you made them feel that they were not invisible. I need souls like this not to erect towering structures of spiritual pride, but to soften the dry soil of the human heart. When you remain faithful in small things, the enemy loses ground inch by inch within your mind. It cannot breach a soul that has learned to hear me in the silent tasks. It may tempt you with grand dreams, but becomes powerless when you remain in step with me among the simplest realities. At your desk, in the kitchen, in the hallway of the hospital, in the classroom, along your evening walk, I walk with you. You do not strive to spread light. You simply refuse to hide it. When you look at someone with kindness, the light has already spread. When you respond to a message with patience rather than irritation, the light has already spread. When you say, "I will pray for you," and truly pray, the light has already spread. These are narrow paths, but along those paths, my life finds someone to touch. My child, do not think that ordinary moments are beneath you. In my eyes, they are the bloodstream of faith. You may stand on a pulpit once in your lifetime, but you enter the kitchen to cook every day. You may pray out loud in a church for 1 hour, but you face pressure at work 5 days a week. It is there that the true front line lies. When you live as one who has returned, small actions cease to be habits, they become service. Not service in ritual, but in rhythm. Every decision, every reaction, every glance, every breath, and within that ordinariness, you become a pathway I use. Not loud, not flashy, but steady as a stream that never stops flowing. When you have walked your own journey, when you have learned to place yes before explanations, when you have understood that delay is not simply hesitation, but an open door for other voices, a new movement begins to form, no longer contained in your personal life, but expanding outward like gentle waves across a lake. You once thought your response affected only yourself, that it revolved around whether your soul would rise, whether you would listen, whether you would open your heart, but you do not see the eyes that are watching, the silent souls hoping someone will go first, the locked hearts still waiting for one simple example that proves light is real. You do not know that every time you answer me, you plant a seed in the spiritual atmosphere around you. And that seed does not lie forgotten like a grain of sand blown by the wind. It becomes a signal, like a small fire that may not be big, yet is enough for the lost to find their way back to camp. A soul who learns to follow me will unknowingly become a living sign of hope to other souls you will never know by name. Every small act you do in private, the prayer no one hears, the patience no one praises, the forgiveness no one witnesses, is like an invisible thread from your soul to another. You once asked me, why do some people simply see that I am at peace, and suddenly they feel lighter? Because true peace is not an inner state meant only for your enjoyment. It is my presence passing through you, flowing into places where there are no sermons, no verses, no hymns. You walk into a meeting where everyone is tense, and the calm in your eyes becomes an invisible invitation. You walk into conflict, and the way you do not retaliate becomes a silent testimony. No one knows how you wrestled in the dark to hear my voice, but that very choice makes you the one who opens doors for the light, not only for yourself, but for the entire space you enter. Spiritual awakening does not begin with crowds. It does not come from stages lit with bright lights or from applause that shakes the room. It begins with one person who turns back, then two who begin to walk, then three who know how to rise when I call. I do not move by the force of pressure. I move by the resonance of souls who are united in response. When many souls, each with their own rhythm, each with their own story, all choose yes at the moment I speak, they connect like roots beneath the earth. No one sees the roots, yet they are what keep the forest standing in storms. One tree may be struck down by the wind, but the forest does not fall because its roots intertwine, strengthen each other, share water, and share life. I intended the spiritual community to function this way, not a few who shine, but many who quietly agree. You do not need to stand on a platform. You do not need to become a hero. You simply need to step into your place within the flow. When you live as one who has returned, those around you feel the difference in your breath, in your gaze, in the way you touch the world. They cannot name it, but they know it is unlike distraction, unlike emptiness, unlike the frantic haste of life. They see the one who used to be tense now at peace, the one who used to argue now able to listen, the one who once feared now no longer ruled by the enemy's whispers. They do not understand the process, but they recognize the result. And in that moment, a quiet question is born in their hearts. If this light is real for that person, could it be for me as well? I do not need you to answer that question with a sermon. You need only continue living in my rhythm. When many souls respond to me together, the spiritual atmosphere shifts, not with an explosion, but with a subtle movement, like spring passing through frozen ground. A seed does not shatter winter in one night. It pushes one thin layer of soil at a time, and eventually the frost must yield. Souls that belong to me do not need to charge forward. They need only remain steady. The more souls choose yes, the weaker the enemy's walls become, not because they are attacked, but because their foundations are built on delay, fear, and misdirection. If you give them no ground, they will have no place to build. When a community chooses to hear me, every spiritual entrance the enemy once exploited narrows until there is no opening left. Deliverance does not come from a grand battle, but from hundreds of small yeses woven into a net of light. And if you think you are too small to make any difference, remember that a single spark once set an entire dry forest ablaze. Yet the spiritual flame I kindle in you does not destroy. It restores. A soul that knows how to listen to me does not stop at merely no longer being lost. It becomes an anchor point for souls who do not yet know the way. When you are willing to respond to me, you allow yourself to become part of a movement you cannot measure, a quiet awakening. It does not rise from stages and platforms, but from small rooms, gentle conversations, patient glances, and handshakes that demand nothing in return. This is how I weave light into a community, not through one great leader, but through the gathering of many souls who know how to return. My child, before you leave these words, I want you to know something that many souls lose in a world full of noise. Returning is not a grand action, not a dramatic turn in front of thousands, not a performance you must perfect so that I will notice. Returning is simply the moment you stop running and allow me to be there with you. You think I am concerned with the image you project, but I look deeper. I look at the heart that has grown weary of holding everything up alone. You are hearing this message not by accident, not by some random algorithm, but because I gently touched your eyes and said, "Listen once more. I know how many winding roads you have walked. I know which nights you lie awake. I know the questions you share with no one. And I am still here, not to condemn you, but to lead you out of the shadow that is quietly claiming more and more of your mind. You think the great battle is where the enemy attacks violently, but it is rarely that loud. It comes in moments of delay, in all the times you say tomorrow, in the minutes of weariness when you think, it's all right, surely God understands. It is there that the bricks of the fortress of darkness are laid. I do not tell you this to frighten you, but so that you understand you are more important than you think. Your silence is not neutral, it is a choice. Delay is not the absence of an answer. Delay is handing the right to speak over to another voice. And that other voice is never for your sake. It promises relaxation but binds you tighter. It promises comfort but asks for your soul in return. I have seen many souls fall to those voices, not in the storm, but in neglect. I do not desire that for you, but you have already known, my light. You have heard me speak to you before. There were moments you could not explain by logic, yet you knew clearly it was I who touched you. You once prayed in exhaustion and peace came into the silence. You once stood at the edge of despair and an inexplicable calm held you back. That was me, not your strength. That was me, not a kind world. That was me, because I never withdrew my hand from you, even when you withdrew yours from mine. And today, I am touching you again, not with blinding miracles, but with my words in this very moment as you listen. My child, you ask me, how do I begin? Not by changing your whole life in a single day, not by proving your faith to the entire world. Begin with one small yes, a yes that breaks the power of delay, a yes that places me first, even while you still do not understand everything, a yes that opens the window to light, even while the room within you is still messy. Remember, when you draw the curtains, the light does not check whether your house is tidy, it simply enters. I am the same. I do not examine your sins to decide whether or not to love you. I loved you before you even knew who I am. I do not look at your weakness to measure out my grace. My grace is sufficient for every soul that is writhing in pain. You do not have to prepare yourself for me to come. You only need to open the door. The world will ask you, if God loves you, why doesn't He force you to listen? Because love does not coerce. I can shake heaven and earth. I can cause the sun to stand still. I can snap chains with a word, but I will not steal your freedom. For if I forced you to love me, that love would no longer be love. I choose to wait. I choose to knock. I choose to stand at the threshold of your heart, not because I am weak, but because I honor your soul. I have placed in you the dignity of a being capable of response, not a machine driven by commands. I long to hear, I have come home. not because I lack anything, but because that sentence guards the life within you. My child, you are listening to this message, and perhaps you think you are only seeking comfort, but I am calling you into something greater, not mere ease, but life, not just pleasantness, but restoration, not sweet promises, but the meaning I placed in you from the beginning. There are souls I have placed along your path who may never hear my voice directly, but they will see me through you. You do not know how far light travels when you speak a sincere word, when you forgive instead of throwing stones, when you rest your hand on the shoulder of the weary, when you choose silence instead of retaliation. The enemy wants you to believe that such small acts change nothing, but in truth, they are the very acts that open the door for me to intervene. Remember this each time you delay. The enemy claims more ground, but each time you respond to me, it loses an entire wall. You do not need armor. You do not need to shout. You do not need to win by your own strength. You only need to step toward the light and keep the door open. When you do this, the fortress of darkness collapses on its own, for it cannot remain standing in the place where I am shining. I do not ask you to be strong. I ask you not to run away from me. I do not need you to be perfect. I need you to give me room. I do not want you to prove your worth. I want you to realize that you belong to me. My child, if you have listened this far, do not say tomorrow. Do not say, let me think about it more. Say yes, even if it is just enough for me to step in. In this very moment, you can bury your face in a pillow and whisper, Lord, please return within me. You can place your hand on your chest and say, I am tired, please lead me back. You can exhale and murmur, I choose the light. I hear every word. I see every breath. I know every step homeward, and I run out to meet you. Now pray like this, Lord. Please set me free from the habit of delaying my response to you. I have said later so many times, yet that later has opened the door for other voices to slip into my heart. Help me recognize that every moment I step back is not neutral time, but ground the enemy claims. Please give me ears that hear as soon as you speak, feet that rise when you call, and a heart that softens when you touch. Lord, please forgive me for all the times I have felt safe in my silence before you. I thought I was thinking more, but in truth I was borrowing time to feed my doubts. Do not let my heart slide further down the path of excuses I create to avoid responding. Grant me the simplicity of a child who knows that the response does not have to be perfect, only honest. Teach me that obedience begins with a single small step, not with a grand, impressive plan. Lord, I ask you to pull my mind away from the lands I thought were harmless. I have allowed strange thoughts to drift through like the wind, while they quietly claimed my memory, my focus, and my peace. Please teach me that the enemy does not need a storm to destroy me, only my delay in responding to your voice. Grant my soul alertness, that I may no longer lull myself to sleep with my own excuses. Lord, please make me remember every time you have called me gently. I know you do not force me to kneel, you wait for me to return by my own will. Let me see that such love is not weakness, but the strength of one who honors me as a person, not as an instrument. Teach me not to abuse your patience, for every second you wait is an invitation, not a license for me to run away. Lord, teach me the danger of postponement, not from your side, but from mine. I have convinced myself that not responding to you is harmless, yet it is precisely that empty space that feeds the noise of the world. Help me understand that my silence does not keep things unchanged. It gives darkness room to build a house in my mind. Please expose this before my eyes, so that I may return quickly. Lord, rescue me from the pride that makes me think I can fix my life before I respond to you. I once wanted to handle everything before coming to you, but it was when I wrestled alone that I sank deeper into invisible chains. Teach me to place returning before repairing, to place yes before justification, to place surrender before perfection. Lord, place within me the heart of Samuel, a heart that knows how to say, "Speak, for your servant is listening." Drive away the false confidence that makes me believe I am wise enough to choose the timing. Replace it with humility, so that I may know the best time is the moment you call. Train me to recognize your voice when you do not knock loudly, but only whisper. Lord, pull me away from the feeling of not yet. I ask you to shatter the illusion that I can delay without loss. Erase the thought that because my words are uncertain, I do not need to speak to you. Remind me that every step of response, however small, pushes the enemy away, and every step of postponement, however gentle, opens the gate for it to enter. Lord, I ask for courage, so that I will not fear opening my mouth even when my heart is not whole. Teach me that prayer is not a finished speech, but a breath returning home. Do not let me wait until every word is polished and every emotion is correct. Help me know that a single Lord, I need you, is enough to break the tightening grip that binds my soul. Lord, heal the fear within me when I draw near to you. I once believed you would rebuke me for delaying, yet you simply open the door and wait. Strike down the shame that makes me hesitate. For shame does not come from you, it is a weapon of the enemy. Help me understand that the step of returning is not a rigid confession, but an act of hopeful trust. Lord, place in me the awareness that you do not wait to see me collapse. You wait to take my hand when I decide to step across the threshold. Help me understand that this threshold is not a boundary you build to frighten me, but the place where I discover the cooperation between your will and mine. Teach me that every time I rise to respond, I step into the calling that belongs to you. Lord, grant me a heart that learns obedience early, not obedience after failure has worn me down. Help me see the beauty of responding at the right time, not because you lack power, but because you want me to walk as a child, not as a slave. Help me know that cooperation with you does not begin when I am ready, but when I say, though I am weak, I still come. I ask you to receive these words and lead me forward in peace. I offer this prayer in the holy name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Do not forget to subscribe and enable notifications so that together we may build a strong community of faith.